Not yet. I'm going to just go ahead and introduce myself. And I really appreciate you folks braving this weather. I'm from Oakland, and it was abysmal when I left, and I was thinking I was flying into sunny San Diego. And the plane ride was scary, to say the least. But anyways, I do appreciate you guys coming out today. I'm just going to give you a very brief rundown of my background. I'm an ONOW certified olive oil sommelier. What does that mean? It means I passed a rigorous set of trials to be certified by the ONOW, which is the oldest and most prestigious school for olive oil sommeliers in the world, and it's in Italy. It was a 3-day course. I had to study extensively for it. It was, without belaboring it, it was putting 1 million blind samples into order by categorizing by intensity of defect. We had 20 samples in every trial, and we had to put them exactly in order by identifying the defect and how strong the defect was. We had to identify what cultivars were in every category. And then we also had to identify positive attributes. So it kind of parallels with some of the wine trials to become a sommelier for wine. There are only 20 of us who are certified in all of North America, and I'm happen to be one of those people who passed it. I'm also the corporate chef for Veronica Foods company. I do R&D, and I develop products and write recipes that use all of the products in this entire room. So I can talk about the culinary aspects of olive oil, as well as the chemical aspects of olive oil and the sensory attributes of olive oil. So today, in this first session, we're going to actually get into the sensory, a light sensory course. I won't ask you to try 20 samples back to back for a full day of testing samples, but we're going to do what I call a very light flight of olive oil. There's going to be 4 oils in the tasting. And then I'm going to talk a little about the new things that are happening in the olive oil world, such as the fact that olive oil is now coming out of 2 hemispheres, whereas 15 years ago it was just 1 hemisphere, 1 place on the planet, and you had to wait a full year to get your olive oil fresh again. Now we can get it from 2 places. And then I'm going to talk a little about chemistry. I don't want to bore you guys, but I think chemistry is an important component of olive oil, and most consumers have no idea that there's even chemistry to talk about where olive oil is concerned. But there's some really important chemical markers that do matter to most consumers, especially if they're concerned with the health benefit of olive oil. We now know how to measure the healthfulness of certain varieties of olive oil. And then I'm going to talk a little about culinary applications. We're going to do some pairings, and then I'm going to take questions from everybody. So if you have a question that's just burning a hole, try to keep it inside, and we'll get to the questions at the end. I was asked by the videographer to kind of keep all the questions to the very end. But without further ado, we are going to jump into our sensory evaluation of olive oil. Now, before we taste these samples of extra virgin olive oil, I just want to talk briefly. I want to give you just a definition of extra virgin, because there usually is a lot of confusion about, you see all these different grades of olive oil in the supermarket. You know, you might see pure and light and extra light. And then there's extra virgin. And so what separates all of these different grades? Well, extra virgin is the highest quality there is in all of the grades. And there's many grades of olive oil, but it is the pinnacle of quality. It's the most expensive. It should have no defects whatsoever. It should have a fresh flavor of olives. So we like to make the analogy that really well-made extra virgin olive oil is like fruit juice. It's simply squeezed from the fruit of the olive, and nothing is done to it. It's extra virgin because it's not processed on any level whatsoever. And so it's very much like orange juice from an orange. It should be fresh, and it should taste just like that fresh orange that was just squeezed. It must pass a chemical analysis. Every single bottle of extra virgin olive oil labeled as extra virgin in the supermarket theoretically underwent some laboratory analysis and was tested for certain markers to identify it as extra virgin olive oil. And we'll get into why that does not work in most cases. And then it also needs to be vetted by an olive oil panel. And the olive oil panel is a panel of tasters, and it's made up of certified tasters. So I would sit on a panel along with several of my peers who are also certified tasters, and we would certify it to be defect-free or not. And then even within that process, there's a way of grading it so that it would perhaps win a medal in a competition. Because just because something isn't defective doesn't make it the best thing in the world, right? So there's actually a process to talk about really, really high quality olive oil within that extra virgin category. So that's basically it. And you know, excluding some exterior factors like how quickly you get the fruit off the tree and when in your season you're harvesting your olives, making extra virgin olive oil is not rocket science. If you have good fruit and you take care of it and you crush it quickly, you can usually make pretty good extra virgin olive oil. So it's unfortunate that so much of what's in the supermarket is not true to label and not actually extra virgin olive oil. It's defective and it's got issues, quality issues, chemical quality issues. And that is typically a function of the farmer choosing to let their fruit become overripe so that they can positively affect the yield. They get more juice out of the olive if they let it become overripe and sit on the tree. However, they also forego the qualification of extra virgin if they do that. So yeah, they might get 20% more yield, but now it's not extra virgin anymore. So the impetus to do that is pretty powerful if you can get 20% more out of your olive. And so you have this dynamic with producers worldwide who watch their olives go from that really beautiful emerald green color, and then it blushes into it gets a little bit of a black color on the skin or purple, and then it goes straight to purple, and then it begins to actually wrinkle like a peach or anything else would on that tree, and now that olive is saturated with oil. In fact, it's lost moisture and it's full of oil, and it's going to be easier to get that oil out, but that oil will never make grade. It will always fall out of the extra virgin category if it's tested properly and it's tasted and vetted properly. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who look the other way, and that oil is sitting in every supermarket around the country. It's really makes up the lion's share of what you're going to find in the supermarket. All right, so I guess we can jump into our tasting, and you know, because I can sit here and explain to you how it's supposed to taste, but once we taste it, that's really the proof positive that we need to understand. So we're going to be tasting the oils that are on the front sheet of your little handout there. And the way an olive oil tasting works is that you always want to taste your most delicate oil in the flight, number one, and then you move up with intensity. So basically, the more flavor and the more sensory attributes it has, it would go later and later in the tasting flight. And before we taste, by the way, everyone, I'm going to teach you how to taste like an expert. So just like with wine, there's a protocol you would, and once again, I'm not a wine expert, but I have been to a couple of wine tastings. And you swirl your glass and you smell it, and then you're really trying to open it up, right? You're trying to get the aroma of the wine before you actually sip it. Well, olive oil is the same way. We are going to open it up, and the way we're going to do that, if everyone has their sample number 1, so we're going to heat it. So you're going to actually need 2 hands to do this. One hand's going to hold that cup pretty tightly. The other hand goes on top, and I'm just going to rotate it. My hands are extremely cold, and so this might take me a while, but what I'm trying to do is generate a bit of friction here to heat that oil up. And the purpose of heating it up is that we begin to release the aromatics in the oil. The phenols, which contribute the flavor of the olive oil, are very susceptible to heat. This is why you hear people running around saying never heat your olive oil up, because it, you know, they're right in the sense that you will begin to destroy those phenols. But we're going to do it in a very gentle manner, and I'm keeping my hand on top so that they're trapped inside the headspace of the cup. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. And after we've heated this oil up a little bit, the next step is we're going to stick our nose in the cup, and we're going to really deeply inhale the aroma of the oil. And the first oil we're tasting is a brand new, it's a fresh oil, so it's an olio nuovo. We call oil that's made within 3 months of its crush date olio nuovo. It's very fresh. It's from California. It's certified organic. It's an Arbasana. I believe this oil came from, I want to say Marysville, so the Sacramento area. That's a very large area for growing olives and processing for olive oil. All right, so next step, you want to just inhale and see how much of that aroma you can get. And it's got a very delicate nose. So once again, this is a very delicate buttery oil, and I'm not perceiving too much of a nose. But I'm getting some, for me, this oil has a green almond characteristic, and it has a little bit of artichoke in it. Yep, green almond, artichoke. The next thing we're going to do, after we smelled it, we're going to aerate it. And this is really going to give you more impact. This is going to really put it up into your sinus passage, and it's going to get it going in your mouth. That's what it sounds like. So you're slurping it. You're introducing oxygen, and you're trying to move it by sucking it to the back of your throat, making a slurping noise. So it's buttery on the front, a little bit of green almond, but this is a very delicate oil, and there's a tiny peppery sensation, okay? Olive oil should always have that, and I don't care if it's even just a modicum, even if you're barely getting a peppery sensation, you should always look for that in whatever olive oil you're tasting, because this is number one an indication of freshness, and it is telling you that the phenols, the antioxidants in this oil are present. They're not gone, they're not depleted. Or maybe they weren't there in the first place, but it's important because olive oil, the holy grail of olive oil, where health is concerned, are those phenols. So if you're not detecting them on your palate, you can pretty much surmise your olive oil's dead. It doesn't have those antioxidants in it. So if you look at the numbers below the first oil that we tasted, you'll see that polyphenols is the very first quotient that's listed. This number, 10 years ago, if you had even mentioned the word polyphenols, people, even in the olive oil industry, who make olive oil, would have looked at you like you were crazy. What are you talking about? Polyphenols are now beginning to be measured in olive oil. And why is this important? Because every olive oil has a different quotient of antioxidants. So you can't assume that when you're drinking olive oil or cooking with olive oil, it's all created equal. It absolutely is not created equal. To date, having measured phenols for almost 10 years now, the highest quotient we've ever seen in parts per million, because this is a measurement in parts per million, is 800 parts per million. This oil is very modest in its phenol content. And those phenols map to the flavor characteristics. So the lower the phenol quotient, typically the more delicate the oil will be. Does that make any sense? Yeah? And phenols are, I don't want to overplay them, but they are incredibly important where olive oil is concerned. Because not only do they positively affect our health in a myriad of ways, we have health studies published, researched, health studies, peer-reviewed health studies connected to the phenols that are attached in your packet. They drive flavor and they drive stability in the oil. So they're protecting the oil from heat, light, time, oxygen, all of the things that attack the olive oil and eventually turn it into some other grade, not extra virgin. This number here is really important because the way it protects the olive oil, it also protects your body. So it's basically going to protect your cells from degradation. It's going to scavenge free radicals. It's an anti-inflammatory. So on and on and on. These are very important aspects of consuming olive oil. The oleic acid, we're talking about omega-9 here. So omega-9 is, and the FDA has now come out and said that they are actually recommending 2 tablespoons a day for consumption of olive oil. And they haven't said that about any other oil. They have not said that about any other oil. So that's a very strong statement. And they've made that statement based on the fatty acid profile, not even the phenols. Looking at phenols as it pertains to health is such a new science where olive oil is concerned that, you know, they have a lot of catching up to do where that's concerned. But just on the fatty acid profile alone, they're really urging people to, this is the best fat and the only fat you should be using in your diet. And then the bottom 3 quotients, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but the DAGs, you can look at the DAG score as a general quality index. So you know how wine has its 100-point score? This is a 100-point score for olive oil. So 91.8 is respectable. 100 being the best it could ever be the day it's made. This DAG score moves downward over time because inevitably the olive oil is the best it will ever be the day it's made, and then a year later it will be a shadow of itself. It would be like squeezing any fruit juice and letting it sit there for a long time, and you'll come back to it and it will be lifeless. It will be lackluster, right? FFA, this is an incredibly important quotient as well. 0.3 is what this was measured at. The parameter, the absolute ceiling for FFA is 0.8 in olive oil. So if you're a 0.9, you're not extra virgin olive oil anymore. So for extra virgin olive oil, it's 0.8. That's the cutoff. If you ever taste a 0.8 FFA olive oil, you will taste that quality in the olive oil because the FFA measures the quality of the fruit. It's basically a measurement of the quality of the fruit that went into the process. So as I mentioned, those shriveled, dark black olives that farmers want to leave on the tree to try to capture as much yield, those are going to be closer to a 0.8 if they were measured, or even higher if they were crushed and then measured for their free fatty acid content. This number also dictates how hot you can get the oil. So the lower the FFA, the higher the smoke point. And you've probably heard people say, don't cook with olive oil, it burns, or it's bad for you, or bad things happen if you do this. The reality is that if you cook with the junk, I'm just going to say it, the junk that's in the supermarket that's a 0.8 or even higher, it will burn at a very low temperature. The lower the FFA, the hotter you can get it. So if it's a really well-made olive oil with a low FFA, it's going to get up to 400 or 420. You can deep fry with it and it won't smoke. So the point of this, without making your eyes glaze over, getting too technical, is that assuming that all extra virgin olive oil is A, extra virgin in the first place, and B, created equal, is something the consumer really needs to reevaluate. We need to throw that out the window and understand that they all have unique chemistries. And depending on what we're looking for in our olive oil, whether it's health or good flavor, you know, knowing this chemistry is what's going to help us make that educated decision. All right? So now we can actually, my long-winded chemistry there, we can go to sample 2. And we are climbing up that intensity spectrum. So you can really be assured that this is going to be quite stronger than the first sample. And if you look at the phenols, I think those phenols are, I think we were looking at 255. That looks like a typo to me, but that's all right. So we should be looking at a 255 for these phenols, not a 155. Yeah. And that's, I might have sent it over to you guys like that. So this is definitely going to be a bit stronger. It's going to have a lot more pepper on it. If you look at the DAG score, it's a 92.5. We've got a nice oleic acid score there. Very low FFA. That means we could deep fry with this. We could put it into a fryer and make arancini right now. We could make calamari right now, and it would not bat an eye. It would be perfectly fine. For this oil, I'm getting a much more pronounced green note on the nose. Definitely getting some grassiness. Maybe a little bit of a green apple peel characteristic. Oh yeah. That is green. So you mowed your lawn and you're smelling the fresh cut grass. You're smelling a Granny Smith apple peel that came off the apple. Very herbaceous, maybe a little bit of fennel in there as well. And the pepper is really hitting the back of my throat in a much more pronounced way. And it's kind of building, it's a crescendo. It's a little bit of a delayed, yep. And that's great. When we in the olive oil business or industry see people coughing, it's a good thing. I mean, we really like that because it speaks to, you know, that's a, and as I'm talking, my tongue is now, the back of my tongue is tingling. So the anti-inflammatory properties of this oil are amazing because it's numbing the back of my tongue right now. So we know for a fact that people who have arthritis and joint issues, olive oil is an extremely powerful nutraceutical for combating inflammation in your body. And this tingling I'm getting on the back of my tongue is a great indicator of that. So this is an Arbequina. It is brand new harvest, so it was from the most recent crush in Spain. We're calling it medium intensity. It's early harvest. It's fruity and herbaceous, mid-grass herbal notes. I'm going to say apple peels in there, a little bit of an apple peel characteristic. Lingering pungency. I absolutely agree with that. Pungency is another word for pepperiness, the peppery sensation that this oil gave us. And very little bitterness. So what contributes to the pungency in olive oil? There are a few different antioxidants that do that. One of them is oleocanthal. It's a compound that's only found in extra virgin in olive oil. And one of them is oleoropin. and there's also hydroxytyrosol. There's over 200 different compounds that make up the family of polyphenols. It's plural because there are so many compounds that make it up. And some of them are extraordinarily powerful. Hydroxytyrosol is one of the most potent antioxidants. So if you Google that, write that word down, hydroxytyrosol. It is found in olive oil, and they're trying to work on ways to extract it right now out of olive oil and use it just by itself, you know, be able to put it into some sort of powder form because it is so powerful. My thinking on that is just consume really well-made olive oil that has a lot in it, you know. But anyways. So do you guys like that oil? Pretty good? Yeah. Now the next one, we're really going to be pushing the limits here. Number 3. This is a very intense oil. It's only 380 parts per million. We don't categorize an oil as high intensity until it breaks that 300 range, breaks into the 300 range on phenols, keeping in mind that we've measured oil all the way up to 8. So you can imagine a 600 or a 700 part per million olive oil. It's rocket fuel. It really is. But the thing to remember where olive oil aesthetics are concerned, they're not ever judged against each other when you're talking about the mild category or the medium category or the intense category. In all the competitions around the world, and there are a lot, they're all judged in their own proper category. So when you submit an oil to be considered in a competition, you will make that determination as the mill. You'll say, this is a mild, so I'm